Thank you for joining us. Ed Markey and Seth Moulton meet in their first debate. Beacon Hill slides toward their budget deadline, and more struggles for the state GOP. We're discussing it all, or at least as much as we can get to, with two ace local political reporters. Immediately to my left, Kelly Garrity of the Boston Globe. She writes the daily newsletter, The Scrum. And Katie Lannan, newly appointed editor of the State House News Service's daily MASSterList newsletter, and in that capacity has an onerous chore. She has to edit my weekly column in MASSterList. Katie, Kelly, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, John.
Good to have you both here. So, Markey versus Moulton. Who had a better night? I'll start. I thought Moulton did a good job. He was more relaxed than he was in the Moulton-Deaton debate that we did here a few weeks ago. He projected well. He was on message and hammered it home. Ed Markey was Ed Markey. And if you were tuning in wondering, well, this guy's about to turn 80, is he too old? There was nothing that would suggest he's not up to another, or at least not up to being reelected and continuing to serve. So I kind of called it a draw, although I hate to do that. Let's start with you, Kelly. What'd you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think both of them sort of laid out their different pitches for where the Democratic Party should be going. And for Seth Moulton, he was talking a lot about what he's done to try to build Democratic majorities in the House with his Serve America PAC. Senator Markey was talking more about how he's been trying to push the party to be more progressive, and he's been pushing some progressive policies, the Green New Deal, Medicare for All. So it was sort of, they each had an opportunity to lay out their vision for the party, and I guess it just kind of depends on which vision the Democratic primary voters in Massachusetts prefer. Yeah,
and Katie, whenever Markey would cite his agenda, his accomplishments, Moulton would push back by saying, oh yeah, Green New Deal, great, but where is it? You know, you talk a big game, but nothing ever gets done. Did that come across as effective?
Yeah, I think, and you know, kind of like what Kelly is saying, is it's a question really here of two dueling visions. Is Moulton is trying to paint Markey as part of the longtime Democratic establishment and questioning whether that's working for people. And you have Markey, even though he's been on Capitol Hill for decades, describing himself as almost still an outsider because he is, as he says, a candidate with fresh ideas. So, again, even though he's been in office that long, it really is going to be interesting to see what resonates with, again, who are Democratic primary voters who might not be as critical as of the Democratic establishment as Seth Moulton wants them to be.
I mean, I hate to be flip or sound flip, as you know, I always try to avoid doing that.
Very serious.
Well, okay, maybe not always. Who is going to show up to vote on what may well be a sweltering hot Tuesday, the Tuesday before Labor Day, in what's one of the biggest vacation weeks or get ready for back to school weeks of the year? I really wonder about
Boston,
that.
It's September 1st.
Yeah,
that's when so many of the leases turn
over. A Beacon Hill Christmas?
Yeah, Austin Christmas.
Austin Christmas, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a big question, especially because, you know, you can imagine up on the North Shore, where there's a hugely crowded primary for Seth Moulton's district. You can imagine maybe bigger turnout there, but otherwise, there's not a whole ton of contested races out there that's going to be driving people to the polls besides the Markey-Moulton showdown.
And, you know, that's everything in this race, right? Who shows up?
Yeah, I mean, even in the 6th district race, it's unclear if people are even paying super close attention to that, and if that's going to be a really big turnout draw, especially on the September 1st day. So. Yeah,
and if I recall correctly, 6 years ago, when Joe Kennedy challenged Markey, he was the congressman from the 4th district. Kennedy was. Markey carried the 4th, so it's not a slam dunk, even though there was a hot race to succeed Kennedy. Anyway, on that note, let's take our break. And when we return, we'll talk a little bit about what's going on Beacon Hill and on the Republican side of Campaign 26. So please stay with us. Welcome back to our conversation with Kelly Garrity of The Globe and Katie Lannan of MASSterList, and you both are on Beacon Hill more frequently than I am. I'm a little bit curious about how the two recent Supreme Judicial Court rulings that threw out the tax cut ballot question off the November ballot and the rent control question, what, if any, impact has that had on Beacon Hill, on its end of session budget deliberations that are happening this month? Is that something that's impacting them, Kelly?
I mean, I think there's a lot of relief on particularly the fact that the tax cut question isn't going to be on the ballot. That was something that folks on Beacon Hill were really concerned about, and so now they don't really have to put forth any energy into fighting that.
Has that opened the door to more spending this cycle than there might have been?
You know, I don't know if that's the case per se, because it wasn't clear necessarily if it was what was going to happen with that question, whether or not it would pass. But I do think sort of it's just a relief for the next budget cycle for folks who are worried about, for the budget writers who are worried about what happens if this does pass, what kind of money are we going to have to work with.
Is there any incumbency fear on Beacon Hill? You know, obviously there's some challenges going on in primaries and so forth. There's always a couple of incumbents who are wobbly, but are you getting any kind of whiff of that, Katie?
I mean, as always, there are very few contested races in the state legislature. And I think a thing that's going to be really interesting to watch play out, you know, typically we have the legislative cycle set up in an election year so that the House and Senate are passing their big bills right before the primary in the, you know, the months and weeks before that. So they have something to tout when they're back home in their districts and on the campaign trail. This year, there's a change in the legislative rules that's allowing talks on some of the more marquee bills to stretch on into maybe even the fall and winter. So we don't know, say, if energy affordability legislation, huge issue, right? We don't know if that's going to be done by the time voters are picking their candidates in the September primary or even the November election. So I think we're going to find out the answer to your question, John, in the next couple weeks when we see just how much legislators are able to strike deals on over the summer. Because if they don't have the hard deadline written in the rules, what they do have to maybe motivate them to find compromise is the desire to campaign on something.
Well, speaking of the campaign, I just got to get this in here. We may get caught by the fact that we tape this segment, our viewers know, a few days before it airs, and a court may decide to let two of the Republican statewide candidates get on the ballot, even though their signatures were successfully challenged because apparently, allegedly, they engaged with a fraudulent signature gathering firm. Kelly, what does that tell us about the condition of the Mass Republican Party?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think the party for a while has sort of been trying to find its footing after, you know, some legal debt that they're still paying off. But I do think it'll be interesting to see whether these folks, despite sort of the State Ballot Law Commission finding that it was likely there are fraudulent signatures just because of sort of some technicalities in the law and how you have to challenge this, the party could still end up with having these candidates on the ballot. I think the ruling should be coming Friday, so I don't know. By the time this airs, maybe we'll know more.
Well, can we agree on one thing, that whatever struggles or woes the Mass Republican Party is experiencing, they're still doing better than the main Democratic Party?
At least they're not generating those kind of headlines, yeah.
Did you two watch Graham Plattner's video that he released the other night, where he dropped out of the race? I watched it with my jaw on the floor. It struck me as almost sociopathic. I didn't believe a word that guy said. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but did you find it credible?
It's a great question. I mean, I think it was unsurprising that ultimately he did decide to drop out. It didn't really seem like there was a path forward for him to continue his candidacy, and the main Democratic Party was sort of putting some pressure on him and trying to move ahead to plan their convention to replace him. So
Maine politics is pretty juicy. Maybe we should all move there and start a second career. What do you think?
You can go back to the colonial times, and maybe we'll just re-annex Maine as part of Massachusetts.
That's right. It was once part of Massachusetts. Great point, Katie. Kelly, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate
John.
seeing you both, and please follow their work and continue to follow WBZ News for comprehensive coverage of this campaign right now. I'm going to send it back over to my colleagues for more WBZ News.